We're just gonna stop singing. We're gonna keep going. No, we're gonna stop. We're gonna do some announcements. Make boom, thank you, Rodney. Somebody got it. So, hey, if you're new here to Boardwalk Church, we just want to say thank you so much for coming and being with us today. You should have got one of these as you walk through. We give you a promise, no hassle guarantee that we will not track you down, do anything weird or crazy. We just want to send you an email and say thank you so much for coming. So if you'll do us a favor, rip that off, put your name, your information on it. We just want to say thanks for being here with us. We also have a gift for you outside by the welcome tent. You can stop by there on your way out the door just to make sure that you pick that up and take it with you. Hey, a couple quick announcements. We have Discover Boardwalk happening next Sunday night. Normally we have it at Heritage Trust Bank off of Coleman, but we have a new location that was granted to us by the Exchange in Mount Pleasant. So we are having this, put the new location on your announcement card for you. That is going to be by the Dudes West. It's the old, pick out your lighting, pick out your wall, pick out your whatever the heck you want to sink and all that stuff, finishing their little complex they have in place there. It's called the Exchange right now. And they're allowing us to use their space for free. So we're going to take that up and use that and take advantage of it. Also, the other thing is this, is if you are interested in being a part of our teams, we have setup teams, we have worship teams. We even have a team that goes over our uncommon stuff. And we're looking for a point person right now to help us out in the uncommon area of our church. For those of you that don't know, we have a desire, a deep desire inside of us to be an uncommon church in a common world. So we're looking for somebody that they have a little bit more administrative skills than me. Amen. Somebody I just like big pictures that you guys got to back down. So they can make some calls and help us to be just practical. Sometimes just being practical is the greatest thing that we can possibly do. Hey, do me a favor. Would you greet somebody, turn around and say hello? But at Boardwalk Church, we fist bump. We don't shake hands. Amen. Somebody I don't get to do.
When is he going to start the video?
Go. Down.
You're fine. You can start whenever you want.
Okay.
Oh, that?
Can't hear. He can't hear.
I got it cranked. It's not playing, Jen.
It's not playing. Why isn't it playing?
The video is playing already.
It's not playing.
It
It's not playing.
it's
It's okay.
Where's the sound?
It's okay.
I did exactly what I did the first time. I hit play.
Dude, I sound great up there.
It's awesome. It's not awesome.
And
There you
There
go.
we go.
This is your
I
fault.
was definitely spoiled with love as a kid. What I do for fun? Well, born and raised Charleston, South Carolina, by my grandparents, and I was definitely spoiled with love as a kid. What I do for fun? Skateboard, shoot my bow and arrow, play pretty much any musical instrument I can get my hands on. Yes, I did go to church growing up. Then just kind of stopped going because my parents really didn't go that much anymore, so I really didn't take the initiative to go myself. And I guess it went from just not even caring if it was real to knowing there's something going on to there's definitely a higher power to there's really only one answer. I actually found Boardwalk, that's a funny story.
Okay.
I used to be in real estate, and I would call a bunch of agents around town, and Jay Satterfield happened to be one of them. And he just called, I called to recruit him over to Keller Williams, and as you can imagine, if you know Jay, then it just turned into a conversation about everything except for real estate. 8 months later, I get a random phone call from Jay. It actually surprised me, and then he asked me if I was free on Sunday because they needed a drummer to play at Boardwalk. And it was actually kind of, I guess, divine timing. This whole playing for churches is very new to me. I've been around churches for a while, but I just haven't ever dove in. And at that time, I took that as like an opportunity to play more drums, maybe meet new people. Then it turned into something I didn't expect. It turned into people being around me that actually genuinely cared. And it wasn't just because I could provide something they needed. I guess I got to a point where I was just going through like kind of like a spiritual battle, kind of like looking deep within. places I haven't even looked in myself. So I got kind of really scared. I didn't really know what was going on, so I just started pushing. I guess I started kind of pushing Boardwalk away in a sense, not because of anything towards them, just because the whole, like, I just didn't understand that people actually didn't care. My life was way different before Boardwalk. It ignited a lot of motivation. Literally to be myself. They don't try to change it. Boardwalk doesn't try to change you, who you are as a person. All they try to do is help guide you and show you who you really are that you might not even see. They saw something about me that I couldn't see about myself. I'm like, I care. Everyone would be like, hey, Randy. Like, Alan would be like, hey, Rodney, how you doing this morning? And it's like, I just felt like they were always happy to see me, and I think they'd be happy to see them. Because I was like, got to the point where I started being able to get some sleep before church because I started cutting off certain bands and just all that stuff. I had more open time to sleep, and then it wasn't joy. It just didn't seem like joy anymore. It seemed like the medicine I needed after like a night. Because yes, I was tired. Yes, I would rather be sleeping at that time. But I just knew once I felt that, it's like, when I get there, it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna have to get on a step ladder to get there on high five. It's just awesome. You're talking about climbing the higher heights. You know. Boardwalk, I do consider it my home in more than just one way. It's sort of me playing there has opened many more doors to just other things, other realizations. Just I kind of look at Boardwalk Church as like a metaphor on the name in a sense. Like you're walking down the dock to go fishing. You don't really know what you're going to catch, if you're going to catch anything. You might trip, you might stumble, you might fall through a board, but you might fall right into the mud. But getting up, someone is always there to help you get back onto the dock. I would say it's a great starting point for Boardwalk because you feel like you're in a room with people that are literally doing the same thing you're doing, give or take, just situations. Everyone's going through different situations, but the overall picture, we're all doing the same thing. And that's just growth, love, family, a community, something that is dwindling every day in the world. Just human connection, human interaction, no judgment.
Welcome to our second week in our Welcome Home series, where we just are excited about what God has been able to do here at Boardwalk. And as we celebrated our 1-year anniversary last week, we were able just to see some of the highlights of what last year brought us. And Rodney, of course, is one of those highlights. And we're just so thankful that he's decided to call Boardwalk home. We encourage you to get inside of our house a little bit more with us, because we truly know that there is a difference between a house and a home. We don't just want Boardwalk to be a place where you can say that you show up and it has 4 walls and it has a roof and it's a place where you just want to come and be comfortable. We hope that Boardwalk turns into a place that you actually want to call home. It's a place where you walk through the doors here and the smells are friendly smells, and the smiles are good smiles, and the handshakes are heartfelt and meaningful. The conversations that happen in the hallway and throughout the space truly are conversations not just to reflect on how your week was going, but what God is truly doing in your life. My wife and I, we took a break as a church, and my wife and I, we decided to go to Mexico over that break just to get a little bit of a breather. Ever since our daughter was born, we never really had time away, just her and I, besides going on trips for work. And so we decided that we were going to take a break and go and do something that wasn't normal for us. Just get away from everything, turn all the phones off, put all the things to the side, and just spend some quality time together. And my wife brought this beautiful gift with us called the neurovirus. Amen, somebody. Anybody know what that is? All right, yeah. She brought that beautiful gift with us that her mom and dad brought down from Ohio with them. And for the first 2.5 days of that vacation, it was basically like, I love you, stay over there, right? Just over there, that way. And then, so I had some really good meals by myself, nice long walks on the beach. It was beautiful. I just had a great time. But honestly, it was a time for me to be able to just deflate, right? Just relax. Just to take the craziness away. But I noticed something when we came home. I noticed that when we cracked the door to walk into our house, it smelled. Because somebody else was living in my house. For the whole time that we were away, her mom and dad were living in our house, so they were cooking different. And they probably didn't clean. I wouldn't have cleaned, right? They were taking care of our dog and our daughter, but the house was just different. So the first thing I noticed is my senses became more alarmed that, number one, the house smelled differently. Number two, as I walked in, there was this massive piles of shoes, like my daughter had free reign to take everything out of her closet and put everything at the back door. I mean, she's 6, I get it, I understand that, but Nana and Papa didn't put that thumb down in the middle of that day. As we walked into the living room, I noticed that certain things were moved, and things weren't folded the way that we had, and the TV wasn't on the normal channel, and there was different dishes on the counter, and it really felt like I went on vacation to come home to vacation. I felt a whole different place. In my life, a house and a home are extremely different. I mean, a house is a place that has 4 walls and a roof. It's a place that provides shelter. It's a place where there's some comfort. But truth be told, houses look different to everyone. Some houses are condos, some are mansions, some are plantations, some are tents. And a house is the idea that there's some shelter. But a home is extremely different. You'll do stuff in somebody else's house that is not part of your character when you do it in your home. You'll go to somebody's house and you'll greet them and you'll smile and you'll be cordial and you put on the best you that you've got. Matter of fact, some of us do that when we show up here in the morning. But at home is totally different. I mean, homes where you take your shoes off. Homes where you let your hair down. Homes where you're allowed to run around without your makeup on. Right? Home is where you can be you. And that's a hope in this series, is that you feel more home. But you have to keep your shoes on. The small things are the things that make a house into a home. A very smart theologian once said, sometimes the smallest things take up the most room in our hearts. See, small things are the things that make a house into a home. You know where your cup is, where you sit. You've got your favorite pairs of pajamas, favorite pair of socks. You know how to fluff that pillow just right. You know how crazy that water temperature is. You know how you have to play with it for the first 15 seconds before it ever gets correct. But it's yours. It's your home. You see, God desires for us to call heaven our home. And for some of us, heaven is just a destination. It's the idea that if we believe in Jesus, then we've got our ticket punched and we're good to go, and we can spend the time in the house of the Lord when we get there. But I don't want to just spend my time when I get there with God. And David said that it's better to be a doorkeeper in heaven than it is to be absent from the Lord. It's better to spend the time with God here now than it is to spend the time in hopefulness for there. And God wants to invite us not just to his house, he wants to invite you to his home. And when you come to my home, one of the first things you'll notice is that our shoes are off. And the music plays softly. And there's usually some food or something sitting on the counter. Because we don't want you just to come to our house. We want you to come to our home. We want you to be a part of it. With hope and expectation that as you leave our home, part of our home comes with you. I believe that's the same kind of principle that God has. That God desires for us to carry around inside of us pieces of His heart. Pieces of the joy that He has, the grace that He shares. Pieces of His character in our lives that we can share with others in this world. And to me, the truth is that I truly hold on to the fact that the little things build the great things in this life. It's the little things in my home that build a great home. One of the greatest things that happens to me, usually on a daily basis, is that when I crack that back door to walk in, I hear this little girl's voice, "Dad." And to me, that brightens my day. It doesn't matter what I've gone through. It doesn't matter who I've dealt with. It doesn't matter what problems were in front of me. The cracking of that door, the sound of my name, helps me know that I'm home. But I also know that there are certain homes that don't feel like that. And there are some homes that when you get home, there's no noise. When you walk through, it feels empty and void. But I truly believe in order for your house to turn into a home, it's got to be built on the right substance. You just can't have the four walls and the roof. You've got to have a substance that pours down to the roots of what that house is truly built upon. See, in my house, we know that our home is first and foremost built upon God. And the prayers that we pray, and the invitation of His presence to come, and the listening of worship music in our house, and being able to bring God into any aspect and every aspect that we possibly can. We know our home is there, and our home is in existence because first and foremost, God's presence is there. I mean, homes, they pop up all the time. And for some of us, we've come from some homes that have been broken. We've come from some homes that have been neglected and been abused and abandoned. And we don't really feel like we're at home fully because we always feel like there's something that's missing. Well, I'm here to tell you that Jesus talked about this. Jesus talked about this in Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 through 27. Listen to these words that He said. "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock." I want to be a wise man. I mean, my whole, not just on the word of Jesus. I want to be a wise person that allows me to know that the decisions that I make within 10 minutes will affect the decisions that I make in 10 months. And those 10 months decisions then will affect what happens in 10 years. It's the long-range thinking that it might just be dealing with your faith in the moment. But in the moment when you make those decisions to bring God into your house, to turn it into a home, that is that moment of decision-making that looks at 10 years down the road, that looks at some of those problems that, truth be told, you'll never have to face if you make those decisions now. Those decisions to bring God in. Those decisions to allow God to be at the center of it. Continues to say this. "And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house." God did not say that we are going to live on top of the mountaintops the entire time that we call ourselves a Christian. He didn't say that just because you say a prayer, everything else is going to be dandy. For some reason, in the society that we live in, we believe that we can jump from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop, and we can ignore all of the valleys. I don't know about you, but I've never seen things grow on top of mountaintops. The only place where I know that things grow are in the valleys. Get with me really quick. Think about this. We love to stand on top of the mountaintops because we love the view that we're able to see. We hate the idea that we have to get into the valley because the valley means hard work. The valley means that we have to be humble. The valley means that something's not going right and we're supposed to be up there. But in the society we live in, it should just be jumping from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop. But the reality is that you can't get to the next mountaintop until you get into the valley. And the valley God produces growth. The valley is the place where it's not beautiful. The valley is the place that hurts them. We don't like valleys in our lives. We appreciate the growth that comes out of them. But we don't like the pain that is inside of them. In Psalms 84, there's this psalm that is written about how the psalmist loves to and longs to be in the presence of God, to be in the presence of his house. He longs to be with God in such a way that he literally wants to push everything else to the side and just to spend time with him. In verse 5, in 84, verse 5, it talks about how there's a pilgrimage that would take place. See, throughout the years of those that were the good boys and girls of Israel, they would take a pilgrimage to Israel, to Jerusalem, to spend extra time in the temple. The number one was Passover. And so what they would do is they would travel throughout of the Middle East and throughout Israel. They would try to get themselves into Jerusalem for this pilgrimage. And one of the places that the people had to walk through was called the Valley of Baal. It means the Valley of Weeping, the Valley of Tears. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound fun. I don't want to go through a valley of weeping. I don't want to go through a valley of tears. The valley that they were actually talking about is a valley that was filled with these trees. These trees that would literally seep the sap outside of them, and it would look as though the tree was weeping, the tree was crying. And the psalmist says that on the middle of this pilgrimage that I go on to go to Jerusalem, that God will turn my weeping into joy. That God will take the things that might have beat up what it looked like to actually have a home and change them and allow grace and goodness to flow. That God will give us a different perspective on how to live a life after Him, to be able to have a life that's built upon the rock. See, God didn't say that the rain wasn't going to come. God didn't say that the difficulty at work wasn't going to be there. God didn't say that the way that the people treat you around you isn't going to just change because you call yourself a Christian. God says it's going to come. But not just the rain, but the flood. How many of you know that there's a huge difference between a rainstorm and a flood storm? I mean, water knows no limits. I mean, it goes to the lowest point. It will infect and infest every single thing it touches. And you can restore things that a fire touches. And yes, you might lose some things that a fire touches. But when the flood comes in, you got to go. Because though the water might dry up, the things that come afterwards truly don't. There are things like that in our lives, that we have felt the pressure of the flood in our lives. Because we didn't plan on losing the jobs. We didn't plan on that relationship breaking. We didn't plan for all the turmoil and stress that comes with this position. We didn't plan. We can't plan. We can prepare. We can put some sandbags up. We can pray and we can hope that the water will be diverted. We can't hold back in our hands, both the good and the bad. And it says, and the wind blew and beat against that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. So Jesus wasn't speaking to people of ignorance in this moment in time. They would have realized exactly what God was talking about in this breath because of the fact that they would know you can't build something on sand. You cannot build anything that you want to call a home on sand. It will not last. The structure will physically fall apart. So there had to be a deeper meaning. And the meaning of this is who are you building your house on? Not what are you building your house on. Who your decisions on? Not what are you building your decisions on? Who are you focusing on? Not what issues are on. Jesus being the rock of our lives, of our faith, of our practical, common sense decision means that we put God before us on a constant basis. But if we don't put God before us, hear what Jesus says. And anyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew. See, it doesn't matter if you're rich and smart, if you're beautiful, if you're ugly, if you're thin, if you're big, if you're stupid. It doesn't matter who you are. The truth is life's going to happen. It's going to happen. And the same person who built their house on the rock and the person who built their house on the sand is going to face all of these different issues in life. Why? Because life is hard. Life's hard. Why? Because we have people. And people, this is biblical, are stupid. Just like sheep. That's what we're referred to. We make dumb decisions all the time. Don't ask my wife what you do. We make dumb decisions all the time. We make decisions that we think are right, are absolutely wrong. We make decisions that we think are the best thing for our family and for the world, and we put ourselves in the middle of the driver's seat for it, and we go for it, only to realize that we're going to get hurt. Life's going to happen. It's going to come. And Jesus is saying it doesn't matter if you build it on the rock or the sand. Life's still going to happen. But what's going to happen is if you build it on the rock, it'll last. I want a faith that's going to last. I know the world's going to rock me. I know that I'm going to face things that I can't fully control. And I know I'm going to face things that are going to put me on my knees before you. I want my house to stand. I want my faith to stand. The only way to do that is to build it on Him. Continues to say that as the wind blew and beat against that house, it fell. And great was the fall of it. When we don't have Christ at the center of our lives, great is the fall that we will face. God doesn't just want to be the center of your house. He wants to be also the center of your heart. The center of your decisions. The center of your future. He wants to be all involved in all of it. He's not just the God of the extraordinary. He's also a God of the ordinary. God desires, this is my belief, that God desires to be more in the ordinary than He ever does in the extraordinary. He's God. He can make extraordinary happen at any moment. But He's also our Father, who desires to be in the ordinary, in the day-to-day, with you and I. In Proverbs chapter 24, verse 3 through 4 says this. It says, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. By knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. The Bible says that in each one of these things we can ask for them. It says in James that if we lack wisdom, we can ask God for wisdom. It says that by understanding things can be established. God will grant us understanding if we ask Him for the understanding. By knowledge our rooms will be filled. He will tell us what to do and what not to do, how to do it, and where to go about doing it. God will fill you and I and the place that we dwell if we invite Him in. We ask Him to join us. We ask Him to come with us. Now, I know last week we talked really quickly about anxiety. We talked about Philippians chapter 4, 6 and 7, about not to be anxious for anything. And we pushed all of that verse apart, and we got back down to three key things. And as I was preparing this message this week, it dawned on me that the three things that we talked about last week were like little bombs that we just dropped in your lap and walked away. So I want to spend a little bit more time on the things that I believe help us turn a house into a home, that help us grow our faith, and that allow us not to be anxious for something else. So the first thing that we talked about last week was this, is that we need to be able to change our perspective when it comes to the things that we're anxious about in our lives, when it comes to the things of how do we take a house into a home, how do we truly allow our faith to grow to the next level. That God is not just comfortable with where we're at. God desires for us to take a deeper step with him at the next level. I believe it's the reason why when Jesus was walking on the water and he called to the disciples on the boat and he was like, Peter, come join me. It wasn't a test to see if Peter could actually want to step out of the boat. I don't believe that. I believe it was more of a test. Does he trust him? And I believe that the issue with the anxiety that we have in our lives and the truly wanting to go after what God has for us is not based off of, I wonder what I can do, but what can he do? Can God truly do this? Do I truly trust him? And so we talked about how we have to change our perspective. We have to change how we look at things. Can we truly be in the boat with Peter when God calls out? Would we actually step out of the boat, or would we be like the other 11 cowards in the boat? Come on, hear that. Peter stepped out of the boat. All everybody else, this ain't happening to me. I'm wet enough. I ain't getting soaked. I don't know how to swim that well. I can't step out of this thing. I mean, the faith that Peter had to literally step out of the boat, not get tied down to the fear of wondering what could happen. I believe God's pushing you today to go, are you ready to step out? Don't get tied back. Don't get held back. Get ready to step out. Get ready to do something. Change the perspective that you have. Peter's perspective went from inside the boat to on the water. That's faith. That's faith. That's God moving in his life. To change the perspective, it means this, is you got to get on the other side. You got to get on the other side of the problem. You got to get on the other side of the hurdle that's in front of you. You got to get on the other side of the mountain that you're facing. You got to get on the other side. You got to look at something totally different. You might be feeling all the pain and the pressure that there's just not enough money in the bank account at the end of the day. Get on the other side of it. What's God calling you to do? What is God calling you to clean up? There might be this, your marriage might be struggling right now, but you know what? What is God asking you to do? Get on the other side of it. Put God in the middle of it. Change your perspective, son. Get ready to step out of that boat. There's a parable about a rich fool that Jesus shares in Luke. And the parable it goes like this, that this man who was a farmer yields this generous crop, this huge crop. And to himself he says that I'm going to go and I'm going to tear down the barns that I have. And I'm going to build brand new ones, bigger ones, so it can hold all of the crop. And the reason why is I'm ready to retire. The crop that came in is good enough for me. I can kick my feet up in luxury now. And as Jesus is telling this, you have to know that the people that were in front of him, their stomachs were turning. Because they know that that's not how it goes. See, how it goes is if you would yield a bigger crop, you first and foremost would take care of those that were less fortunate, not yourself. You would leave extras in the field for the widow and for the orphan and for the beggar, so they could feed their bellies. You wouldn't just go knock down two perfectly good buildings to build a bigger one. No, you, matter of fact, wouldn't even get through the gate to be able to brag about it. Because in those days, everything happened at the gate. The gate is where the wise men sat. The gate is where treaties were made and permissions were granted and marriages were certified. See, the gate is the place that if you were an elder, you would go and sit at the gate and you would know all of the things that went out and came in. And so as Jesus is sharing this parable, he knows that the people that are listening around him are scratching their heads going, that's not right. That's not what we do. But you know what? In our society, it is what we do. Because we look at people and say, go to the next mountaintop. Go after the next promotion. It doesn't matter who you run after or run over. Just get them out of the way and get to it. How much bigger can we make our account? How much more money can we have to be able to satisfy the desires that I have inside of me? And what Jesus was trying to show them is it's not about the stuff. It's about where the stuff comes from. Because without the rain, without the soil, without the creation that God made, it's pointless. The rich fool had to change his perspective. Ultimately, Jesus says, the man has no idea what could happen to him tomorrow. And neither do we. Are we in it for ourselves? Is the perspective that we have, the things that we're facing, the things that we want to solve, and how we want to handle it? Is God even on the radar screen for how to have that conversation? Is he even on the radar screen on how to budget those accounts? Is he even on the radar screen on how to manage your family and parent the right way? How to love your spouse and those that are around you? If God's not in the middle, when the rain comes and the storms blow, it'll fall. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11, it says this: no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Let me be very clear this. I know that there are things that happen in our lives that it's not because you needed discipline, but it's because somebody else made a dumb move. You got affected by it. But be careful to guard. To guard your heart, to not have to slide into the realm of discipline. God desires for us to live a life that is filled with joy and peace and grace, with forgiveness and his righteousness, with peace. We have to get on the other side of the perspective so that we know what we can do. And we also have to learn God's perspective. This was the second point we talked about last week. In order to learn God's perspective, we have to do something. We can't just sit back and ask God to show us his glory. There's going to be something that we actually need to do in the middle. The thing we need to be able to do is we need to discover God's character. We need to read his word. We need to spend some time with him. We need to scratch our head and ask some questions. I shared with you last week that we're going to be doing this series coming up called Ask For. We got at the end of the service, you'll see this slide come up, and it's got a number on it. You can write that number down, and throughout your week, if you've got a biblical question, or if you've got something, man, how do I get through my marriage or this? How do we do finances? Whatever it is. We want to be here for you so that you can help not just have a good life here, but have a great life here with God at the core. And part of learning God's perspective and discovering his character is spending time with him. You really don't know who I am until you spend time with him. And you can't love somebody you don't know. So for us to say that we love God but yet don't spend time with him, something's wrong. In Numbers chapter 23, verse 19, it says this: God is not a man, so he does not lie. We could probably stop right there. Because for some of us, we feel like God is a man. We feel like he's going to pull his promises away. We feel like everything he said is going to change. We feel like he's not there for us. But God is not us. Amen? He's not made like us. He doesn't think like us. He is not human, so he does not change his mind. Has he ever spoken and failed to act? Has he ever promised and not carried it through? The answer? No. God says he's going to do it. He does it. And he doesn't do it halfway. Which means God's calling us to do something today. He's calling us to trust him. Trust him with our faith. Trust him with our marriages, our jobs, our children, with our relationships. He's calling us to trust him. So how do you trust God? What's the practical next step? Well, say yes. Say yes. For some of us, we've heard no so much in our lives. We think no is the right answer. But when we say yes to God, God does great and mighty things. Colossians chapter 2, verse 6 through 7, it says this. So then, just as you receive Christ Jesus as Lord, continue to live your lives in him, rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. I know I've been there. I've been in positions where it's extremely hard just to say yes to God. Because it's uncomfortable. It's different. And you've been hurt. You're just not ready to say yes to somebody that you just can't touch, you just can't put your arms around and just hold. Because that part helps you. That gives security. God's not in the business of trying to hold you. He's in the business of trying to help you. He's in the business of trying to get you from A to B, not stretch you all the way to C. Because God knows you. And God made you on purpose. And for some of us, there's things in our lives, it just doesn't make sense for us to say, yes, God. It doesn't make sense for us to turn it all over to him. But if he put his son on the cross for you, if he changed it all, we can say yes. We can say yes. Father God, in the middle of this moment, I just pray, God, that you allow us to have a yes in our heart. Lord, I don't know what you're asking us to do. I don't know what where you're asking us to go, God. But Lord, would you put a yes in our heart for you? Yes to believe you. Yes to walk with you. Yes to our future. Yes. Father, will there be a yes in our soul, a yes in our mind, that as we leave this place but never out of your presence, God, that we can hold on to a yes for you, Lord. A yes for your glory, a yes for your presence, a yes for your peace, a yes for your strength. That we can stand with you, God, now and forever. In Jesus' name.
Thank you. You're welcome. Because I wondered when you wanted to start doing the music again. I wondered when you wanted to start doing the music.
Still not sounding right. Having issues today, so we're gonna keep figuring it out. But we can leave it running again, okay? Like, you know what I mean? You don't have to do that.
Okay.
Give yourself away, oh, the overwhelming. so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I could learn it, I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
So, Father, we thank you. We thank you that you left the 99 to chase us down. We thank you, God, that you show up and you help us to turn our house into a home. So, Father, I just pray over us right now, and I ask, God, that you help us to have a yes in our hearts for you. A yes in our hearts, God, to do great and mighty things for your kingdom. Lord, I know there's a lot of crazy things that happen in this world. But I also know that there's a reason why you made us. There's a reason why we're here. So, God, would you equip us to do great things in your name for your glory this day? It's not about us, God. It's all about you. God, I thank you that you use us to allow others to see your glory, even in this day. So, Father, let there be a yes inside of us for you. Jesus. And two quick things before we get ready to walk out. First one is this. As a family of Boardwalk, we normally give towards the end of the service. So there's a way that you can do that. You can either give through the basket on the way out the door, you can do it online, or you can do a text to give. But if this is your first time here, please just allow this service to be a gift to you. We're so thankful that you're here with us today. And the second thing is this. You asked for it. So there's a screen that's going to pop up that has the you asked for it, and it has the number on it, that you can just text in and just tell us what's something that you would love for us to go after, and that we can go after as a church. Hey, as your pastor, I love you. I'm praying for you. I'm encouraged that God's going to do great things in this with us. We're walking in an uncommon way for a common world this year. So let's sing, let's rejoice. That's what God's going to do.
She's messing up. I messed up. I was way down here. She's way up there. But she's getting them wrong. She sang this out of order like 3 times.
Oh never gonna let me down. You're 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 never gonna let me down.
As we leave this place and around his presence, go with the understanding that he